I am the Dungeon Tutor, and today I am here to show you how you can win at Dungeons and Dragons! Now, some people will tell you that you cannot possibly win at Dungeons & Dragons as it is a shared storytelling experience which can only really be won by sharing a story with the others at your table and perhaps your character surviving and doing great things, and I am here to tell you that that is completely ridiculous. That those are good things, don't get me wrong, they are truly admirable, but in truth, you can win. Because how do you win at role-playing games is by being the coolest, being there and enjoying it to the utmost. And how can you do that if you have a bad or terrible character sheet? Okay? Character sheets are the very first things people see, besides you yourself, and let's face it, some of us aren't always looking quite so stylish these days. So, if you want to impress with how cool your character is going to be when you're done with it, you should start out with a truly awesome character sheet. Now, of course, most people get by just fine with those produced by the company that makes your game. So, if you're going to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, you might very well be familiar with one of these. This is a basic 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons character sheet. Very functional, very efficient, uses up that space well, and it flows quite well too. All of the important bits to start out your character right here on the left, your attributes, of course, the things you're going to refer to again and again and again. Right next to it, all the things that derive from your attributes. So you have your saving throws here, you have your skills here. Those are the prisms through which your attributes will continue to apply in-game and show how cool your character is. Yes. And also next to that are your combat abilities. That is the thing that you will be referring to again and again and again and again and again in almost any game of Dungeons & Dragons. Let's face it, that book is 80% about combat. You're going to want to use all those cool toys and skills and things that you've got. All those powers and spells, they're there for a purpose. And quite often having that right here where you're going to look at it again and again, too useful. Of course, you have your armor class, hit points, things like that. Those are also very important as you use them. And you're going to have all of your feats and things, which aren't often things that you trigger. They're just things that exist, so it's good to remember them, but rarely you're going to refer to them with the same significance as you are going to be for the skills you're going to use or the attacks you're going to make again and again. And then, of course, you have all the fun stuff with your proficiencies and things. And, of course, all of the reminders of what your character's personality are, which you can refer to back and forth. Certainly can be very useful, very handy, especially if you've got a game master who enjoys using this little thing called inspiration. But if you look at the character sheet, it is like a spreadsheet. It is efficient, yes, but outside of just a little styling here and there, it's laid out very well, but it's unexciting at best. Truly, it's not the worst thing that you could use. You could make a character sheet out of a single scrap of loose leaf paper, or perhaps even a 3x5 card if you're willing to write really, really small. But this is the baseline. This is the default. This is the thing when almost everybody else is going to be using, let's be honest here. Now, is this the best? Is this winning? No, this is settling. And again, you can run just fine with this, but you can do better. Now, how you do better is largely going to depend on you. What kind of time you're willing to put into it, and what are your individual skills? Do you have some artistic expression? Because I know people who can take a single piece of blank white paper and turn it into a work of art worthy of hanging up in a museum. They are that good. Special shout out here to Chet Minton, who is one of my favorite artists, does excellent line art, and you should look at him if you ever need anything illustrated ever. But, more to the point, there is a variety that is out there that is truly stunning if you bother to look for opportunities to enhance your character sheet experience. Now, I said, a lot of it depends on you. So, some of these things might be even better if you yourself are skilled in art. And I recommend, because as a skill, it is something that you get better at as you practice. So if you want to illustrate, practice. Even if you start with stick figures, you can get better and better and better. Read up, look at other manuals and things like that, and you can be a brilliant artist. I have no doubt about it. You are all very attractive, competent people, and I have every bit of confidence that you are the next Da Vinci if you apply yourself. But in this particular case, if you do have such skills, then there are a variety of outlets for you that can accentuate those skills and apply them to the character sheet. For instance, if you have a skill that you don't think really applies to Dungeons & Dragons, like say you were a gifted wood burner, as I know some people who are very, very crafty with those wood burning kits and everything, then perhaps maybe you can find some sort of a notebook like this, or just a few pieces of paper and a little bit of paint, put a hinge on it, attach in some paper, and this could be an absolutely amazing character folio. Not just a sheet, a folio, which you can refer to all throughout a campaign. And as you see, it's pretty well protected. And can you imagine this with beautiful art across it? And all of it working towards your character? As soon as you look at this, your character sings out from the page without even opening up the pages and perusing it if you have the artistic skills. I, sadly, do not. I haven't put in that kind of time in it, and while I am a middling artist at best, I mostly doodle, so you see what that does for me. But it doesn't mean that these ideas are any less solid. If you even get your hands on something as simple as a composition book, this can be 50 times better than a standard character sheet. Again, if you are artistic and can doodle in anything, that's great. If you can't, you can still arrange this to be superior to the basic character sheet in most ways. And if you ever want to double dip, you can take one of those character sheets, fold them in half, stick them in this, and still refer to it for your day-to-day. But I will show you that that is actually not always going to be your best option, especially if you're going to be playing in a campaign that has layers and has any element of growth and development, and if you are a good player who takes notes, as most players should. So, with something like this, which is a lined composition book, you have quite a few pages, so more real estate than a standard character sheet, and you can arrange it how it makes sense to you to arrange it in just such a way that you can easily access the information you're going to need again and again and again and again and again. So, with something like this, yes, it does take a little bit more time. Obviously, the character sheets are convenient, but if you're going to make a character sheet that wins, I'm going to suggest doing it in other ways. For instance, if you are going to do this, think about the way that the character sheet is designed. Oftentimes they make sense, they flow, they go from your core character abilities and, parameters, and they flow through all the individual steps that you might actually need in order of the most common occurrences. So, in Dungeons & Dragons, all things generally flow from your attributes. That's why they're the first thing right underneath your name and the character's name, front and center. You can see them right away, you can see the modifiers, boom, you are prepared to understand the core tenets of your character. Those should be on the front page of your folio, so that you can see them easily, and you can easily access them to describe, oh, is my character a huge, hulking, unstoppable force, or are they a meek little milquetoast who can't push a door open without a good running start? That is the useful things that your character will depend everything else from. Then perhaps on the next sheet, or possibly on the same page, if you favor small writing and economy and aren't taking advantage of how awesome your character can be, all of your skills. And skills are something that you look at often in a game like Dungeons & Dragons, oftentimes more useful than the actual attributes might be, perhaps, but they should be front and center, certainly. And then after that, perhaps you'd have a list of your combat abilities, because that is the next thing that's most often used in a game of Dungeons & Dragons that I've ever seen. All of the most basic, starting from the most common. If you have a preferred weapon that you wish to use, and maybe it fits you a style, your idiom, all those tasty, tasty feats and class abilities, then yes, that should be front and center on the top, as you'll be referencing it often, possibly erasing and making room for changes that you will be making as your character grows and expands and maybe gets new tricks and new items. You'll have all that room. Just dedicating a single page of this will last you through an entire campaign, possibly. Now, if you're the character who has a Swiss Army knife of lots of different weapons, lots of different spells and attacking cantrips and fun things like that, then having an entire page like this makes a lot more sense than cramming it into that little window from that character sheet over there, doesn't it? And this means you don't have to constantly go from character sheet to character sheet to character sheet as your eraser wears holes in it either. With this, it's relatively simple. You just move forward. That does mean, though, that you should leave yourself multiple pages sometimes for the things you're going to use over and over again. Skills, it doesn't make sense. There's a finite number of skills. It's not like you're going to be adding more onto it unless your campaign requires other skills than the ones that are in the book, in which case this gives you plenty of room for that, doesn't it? Yes. Also, which is very useful for something like this, is your treasure, and your equipment generally tends to be vastly more than the tiny little box they put on that character sheet. It should have been put on the back page, let's be honest here. Almost every character I have has to write everything so tiny in order to fit everything on that little box. And don't even get me started about the ridiculously small windows for gold and treasure, and it doesn't work. Almost everything spills onto the back sheet very, very quickly. So, no worries with that, right? You can have one page for gear, one page for treasure. That'll take care of all of your needs for quite a long time. And if you have a very treasure-rich game, dedicate 2 pages to treasure. Easily enough. You've got them in here. You might as well use them, right? Right. Now, there's plenty of other things that are on there. What your character knows and their traits. That should be another thing that comes up right after your combat abilities because, again, you might be referencing those again and again and again. With these, you've got plenty of room here, don't you? Those pages in a standard character sheet were made to squash everything together so it all fits. Not everybody writes that small, and certainly not write that small legibly. So expanding into something like this can make an awful lot of sense. But what really makes a character folio make more sense altogether is hands down all the note-taking and record-keeping that you can do with something like this. If you just put your character and all the information that you need and all the space that you're going to need to make changes to your character along the way in the first 10, and if we're going to be extraordinarily generous, 20 pages of something like this, unless you write really, really large, I suppose, but still, you're going to have a lot of room left over for an entire campaign's worth of notes. Things that have happened, NPCs that you've met, cool shops, villains that need to have vengeance against. That's all going to take up space. And if you can put it on something like this and have it when you have your character sheet, you no longer have to go looking around your backpack for that note paper that you scribbled something on the back of, or that receipt paper that had the last treasure that you got from the Dragon's Hoard, and then you have to go up to whoever handles that kind of thing. Oh, excuse me, I don't have my treasure anymore. And maybe if it's the Game Master, they just say, ha, it's not on your character sheet, you don't have it. Oh, too bad. It fell through the holes in your backpack. Oh, you should get that fixed. No, you would have it all right here. And another thing that's incredibly useful for this, which again, most of those character sheets don't have, is room for a backstory. And why do I think a backstory should be kept in with the character folio? Because it's an intrinsic part of your character, isn't it? That way, when you're adventuring along and all of a sudden you want to say, I want to say something that's truly emblematic of my character, something that puts my stamp on it and develops my character a little more, I can look through my backdrop and I can find out that I have an Aunt Niesel and she's very famous for her rhubarb pies. And I can say, I would rather drop one of my Aunt Niesel's rhubarb pies. And then everyone will go, oh, wow, that's pretty big. He only references his Aunt Niesel's pies with reverence, and he clearly would never want that to happen. And that's a little bit of extra character that you've just added and flavored that to win at role-playing games. It makes your character cooler. It brings more life to them, as your average person is fond of dropping things from their own life into their conversation. You can do that too, and you'd have the ultimate reference right there, because your backstory would be in your hands when you have your character sheet. Win all the way. Now, of course, too, with all that space, the temptation to doodle will become, for many of us, something you can't resist, nor should you. When you are done with your campaign, and this stands as a living, breathing work of art, something that you've crafted through the shared experience of all of the people at your table and the Game Master's lens as he's trickled this fantasy world through, who knows what you'll end up with? Sketches of maps, flowers, dragons burning a field, something like that. Anything you want, and it's your imagination, whatever's been inspired by your experiences, which helps to make those experiences more concrete. That is one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself, is to have something like this. And I can tell you this, that if you ever want to give the ultimate gift to a game master, give them your character folio after the campaign is over. That is one of the richest gifts that I've ever received as a game master. And if some artistry and some personality went into that, by all means, enjoy that. Now, that composition book is, again, almost the default for the minimum amount of effort that you can put in. Those things can be had for under $1 and easily enough almost anywhere, if you follow the right sales, as I tend to do. But you can do better, right? Of course you can. Now, for example, in a lighthearted campaign, or even a series of lighthearted campaigns, you can get tiny little folios, little notebooks like this. This came from Steve Jackson Games, probably was bundled with a dice set or something that I ended up getting. I don't even remember at this point, but I've been keeping this for a very important purpose. If I have an extremely lighthearted role-playing game and I want to have characters kept for posterity's sake, then a folio like this keeps all the notes together, just in all the advantages that I said before. But this one is a small little notebook with nice blank white pages, all ready to have plenty added on. So, for instance, if I was going to have a night to remember, and I was going to play a lighthearted game like Kobolds Ate My Baby, where your kobolds routinely fit on a 3x5 card easily enough, and when they die, they're just as easily discarded, I can keep the memories of all those characters, even as they die, in something like this, and still hang on to that after the game, so I can remember the fights and struggles of that little kobold. I can write down plenty of room for the details of how they died, the triumphs that they had, and remember how much or how little they actually did. This would also work for other games that are very, very lightweight, like Ghostbusters. The characters are essentially defined by 4 statistics and a specialty here and there, and that's really about it. A section for how many brownie points they have, well, something like this would be fine. I could have an entire troop's worth of Ghostbusters in here easily enough. And so this would be a great folio for those kind of characters. Now, if I wanted to go something a little bit more elaborate, but still, keeping on a budget, you can find things like these notebooks. Bound in a bit of leather, they're otherwise plain white pages, and something like this would be, again, this would be a nice traveling character sheet, something that I can easily keep in a backpack or something, and if you arrange it the way that I just described the character sheet flowing, you would have something that would be very handy to pick up and be ready to use at a moment's notice in whatever game you find yourself in. So something this small, or maybe it's Big Brother for those of us who have eyes that can't focus on the small details like we once wanted to. That can be extraordinarily useful, and that, again, that's a notch up from a composition book, isn't it? Of course it is. It looks much classier. And, the cool compass design on the front hints at exploration and a daring sense of adventure. But, again, I also value economy as well as a little bit more personalization. So when I was at a thrift store, I found this notebook, which, spiral bound, this cost me less than $5. And it reads, "The Curious Mind, Tales of a Genius at Work. Considering my penchant for playing wizards and the like, the next time that I play a character, odds are they're going to have some cerebral skills." So, something like this is, first of all, fairly durable, the hardcover. And the nice thing I like about this is that the pages are lined and have that nice border and everything, so it looks attractive to the eye. I don't have to do very much with my limited artistic skills, but I still can. I've got plenty of room, and there are enough pages in here that I can weather a pretty decent-sized campaign with this. So, just by pulling this out, maybe scribing the name of the character across it, this would be an excellent character folio. And if the worst should happen, say the character should die, I can easily trim out that character, especially if they're anonymous, they didn't do very much, or a character that I don't want to remember from a campaign that I'd like to forget. I can start over again with a slightly diminished notebook, but still have the cool factor of having something like that. And again, it's evocative, isn't it? It kind of shows you a mindset of a character that I'm already thinking of. A character that is sure that they're an absolute genius. And I think all of you may have seen some sort of character template like that. The entertainer who thinks that they are an absolute maestro at their craft and therefore deserves a certain amount of accolade just by their name alone? Certainly. Also, sometimes you find odd little odds and ends here and there that might also work very well. I found this was part of a stationery set. It came with a very bad pen that was, again, dragon-shaped, but wrote for all of about half a page and then died, and I didn't really feel like replacing it because it was very uncomfortable to use. But this has 2 resin plates on either side for excellent protection, and it has unlined paper in the middle so that I can use it as a sketch journal, certainly, but I can also use it for a very competent character sheet. And again, the dragon motif would be very, very appropriate for a game featuring dragons, or maybe even a dragon character, say a Rift's dragon player character perhaps, or maybe a game set in a world of dragons, like a Dragonlance setting, or perhaps if I was going to play and I knew I was going to go into the Tyranny of Dragons storyline from 5th edition, Horde of the Dragon Queen, Rise of Tiamat, this would be a pretty striking character folio too. But if you want the ultimate in customization, you want to, perhaps spend a little bit. You want to get something that looks really nice, and you want to win. Of course we want to win, right? Well, then perhaps you would even take the next step, possibly one might consider the nuclear option, of going and buying a pre-made character folio. This one is incredibly attractive because of the very handsome wizard on the front cover. Yes, that is my alter ego Zixgramus from GUI Cube. And yes, this came from GUI Cube, which was advantageous because I was going to get my portrait done anyhow, and they were nice enough to get me these character folios with my image on it. But with this, we have all the advantages of a pre-made character sheet. It has the layouts and formatting. It has useful notes that I can lay out every aspect of my character's possessions unto, even their background and story notes and spells. And if I lay this out, people know that I'm serious about my character. I mean, I put my own face on this one, as a matter of fact, but still, even if it's not your face and it's your character's face, they will look at that and go, wow, that is a character sheet. And I don't know about you, but if I was going to, quickly just kind of look over and say, which one would I go with? Well, I know which one I'd go with. This is something, when you lay it down, people's eyes are drawn to it, and they immediately go, wow, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a gutsy move making this as your first level character, because, the character dies. This is going to feel really, really sad. But all told, this is a character sheet that allows you to win. This is one that everybody looks at, and it enhances the game more. Why? Because they look at this and they are immediately brought to mind my character, which is going to be reinforced with everything that comes out of my mouth at the gaming table, isn't it? I'm going to be in character. I'm going to show them what this person is like through my play, my role play, and hopefully when I succeed, they'll remember those roles that I made and remember that this is the character that was able to win. And perhaps they'll even chuckle a little bit. They'll remember the times when I rolled and it didn't work out so well, and they'll still remember he still won at role-playing games, not necessarily at cards or at seducing the queen or something like that. No, but by having a cool character sheet to start with, I am already starting the win process by having something in front of me that brings my character to mind, that has everything that I need for my character at my fingertips, laid out in exactly the way that I want it. That's the ideal for a ideal character sheet that sets you up to win at role-playing games. And in this case, to win at Dungeons & Dragons. I'm the Dungeon Tutor. Thanks for watching.